Good evening, Dharma brothers and sisters, both online and in person. I'd like to welcome you all to Rongton Buddhist Training College Thursday evening philosophy classes for Term 3 of 2025. In case there's anyone new, either online or watching the recordings, I'd like to introduce our teacher for this course, Lama Choedak Rinpoche. Rinpoche was born into a nomad family in Tibet, and they escaped when it became unsafe. He went on to study and practice as a monk under some of the most prominent masters of the Tibetan tradition in Nepal and India. This culminated in him completing a 3.5-year solitary meditation retreat, earning him the title of Lama, or spiritual teacher. He was later bestowed the title of Rinpoche, or High Lama, in recognition of his translation skills into English and his expertise in transmitting traditional teachings to contemporary audiences such as ourselves. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge our benefactors and sponsors, as well as our hard-working committee and technical team who make these teachings possible. So this term's topic, we're going to look at a classic text called the Sutra of the Wise and the Foolish. This is also known as an ocean of narratives, and it was published in English in the early 80s by the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. Anyway, that's all from me. I'll leave you all with Rinpoche. Hope you all enjoy the course. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamila. Good evening and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me and Tibetan Buddhist Society Canberra and all your fellow Sangha members. So here, as Jamila mentioned, tonight onwards we are going to read a collection of sutras which are collectively called Sutra Wise and Foolish, but actually it consists of many different stories. So I'll introduce about it later after we do the prayers. So please, thank you for joining me and taking your time. Make this listening as a meditation. Not just for this tonight or for the time we are listening, but for your future years and for your mind stream, for the benefit of others, how we may be able to understand others and ourselves and what must have been we to each other, what may have things I've done to them or they did to me. This kind of sutras will reveal many openings. So your listening is not just to know about the anecdotes of who, what, when, where, and why things happened, but in relation to that, how many of the things that we are going through with what appears to be maybe your dad or sister or mom or husband, but were they someone else in some of our past incarnations? This will greatly help you to re-relate, and that's the Sutra Wise Foolish is all about so many such things. So therefore, I'd like you to listen as deeply as possible for not just today or tonight, but for others and for your future, and how to understand life and past lives of this life, and what this may bring into the future if what we do now will have their future, their consequences. Nothing is inconsequential. Everything is a result of what we did in the past, in different I would say wearing different hats, hats of life. We seem to have many hats in this very life. So with this in mind, we'll do the prayers. Thank you. Join your hands at the heart. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajere Pyede La Dhamma Bhavachu Ajevenda Ashare Buddha Tuebe Enda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajere Pyede La Dhamma Bhavachu Ajevenda Ashare Buddha Tuebe Enda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Ajere Pyede La Dhamma Bhavachu Ajevenda Ashare Buddha Tuebe. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion of those near and far. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know a powerful happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion of those near and far. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far, according to the intelligent and predisposition of it. Vehade yutanda dharma agrelo common goals. So, to a very old book actually, this collection of sutra, or sutra means discourses. The collections of sutra discourses were translated from, no doubt, from Sanskrit. First, I was said to be translated into Khotanese language. Khotan is a Central Asian republic which doesn't really recognizable these days, but played a very significant role as part of the Silk Road, which became the main road from where Chinese and people who traveled to India. So their Buddhism spread before even coming to Tibet. So this text, the Sanskrit was lost. Original Sanskrit was lost, but it was translated from Sanskrit into Khotanese language, and then from Khotanese language it was translated into Chinese language. And the Tibetans couldn't find the Sanskrit, so they translated that from Chinese into Tibetan. So the majority of Tibetan Buddhist texts are translated from Sanskrit into Tibetan, but there are at least a couple of dozens of Buddhist texts that were translated from Chinese into Tibetan. And then, of course, this was translated from Tibetan into Mongolian. And from Mongolian, this was translated into English. So this book is almost like has been chewed up in six languages or so before you can see in English. Usually, in all Tibetan texts, they say in which language they translated from. This one, they don't say that. I don't know why. They should give credit to Chinese language because it was translated from Chinese language. And the Tibetan translator is Chodrup. Chodrup was a really multilinguist. He translated from Sanskrit into Chinese. He translated from Chinese into Tibetan, and also from Sanskrit into Tibetan. So he was an incredible translator. Almost most people forget who he is because there were many hundreds of years ago. You couldn't find this book online because they don't want to make it available freely available as some books are made available. So this was, as Jamali mentioned, was published in Dharamsala in 1980s by the Tibetan Library of Works and Archives. I'm sure it's still available if you were to purchase through Amazon, maybe. But we're going to read this book each night. It has 52 stories. Each of those stories has 5 things. It talks about always to do with the Buddha, because otherwise it wouldn't be sutra. Buddha is always the teacher is always the Buddha, and he has a particular interlocutor. Interlocutor is the actual person asking or prompting the question, prompting the stories. So sometimes the one who's prompting is the main character in the story. So it talks about the teacher, the Buddha, and it talks about place in India where this conversation or discourse took place, and then with whom it took place. So, and then what about? What about? And so usually it's about how to be wise, how to be wise and not to be foolish. So the title of the story book is called Sutra, Wise and Foolish, because it's almost, you can tell what would be the foolish aspect of the wise if you didn't do the wise way. Sometimes it highlights mostly the wise way, but it sort of implies what would be the opposite, the foolish. If you did this or if you didn't do that, it would be otherwise. So good thing about this is it gives you, it makes you to think of places in India that still exist today and where these things have occurred. Place like Saravasti, where Buddha spent 25 years in his retreat, almost occurs on every second story. So that shows how important Saravasti as a place is, where Buddha spent 25 years in his retreat. And then there you will get to meet some of the important personages, important identities in life of Buddha, such as his nephew, cousin Ananda, and others, and some of his lay disciples, and his and then ordained disciples, and so on. So you will actually be able to piece together who, what, when, why, how, and this story came about. So important. So it's sutras are very, very authentic, I would say classical story that all Buddhists agree have one thing in common. In the southern Buddhist Theravadan countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, Burma, and Cambodia, Laos, they do argue very strongly that the teaching should be taught by the Buddha, not by attributing to somebody else. Which I think has a fairly valid point, because in the, not so much Mahayana, but in Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism, the story about where the teachings came from is all some kind of a very mystical source that's not historically like tantric texts. They couldn't really historically say where it was taught and who to and so on. There's hardly any historical person, let alone place, that are mentioned. And the subject matter itself is also even more esoteric, even though they are very much heavily leaning onto the fundamental teachings and tenets of Buddhism. And that's why our Theravadan brothers sometimes question where the Mahayana and Vajrayana teaching were given or taught by, and they actually argue that these are not historically, they couldn't verify, not any of the persons. They're not no historical persons. So while and actually people like me who try to translate between languages and culture and history, actually I can understand why Theravadins say that some of our texts, however valuable they are, could not quite I would say trace of its historical origin. They are very mystical origin. They have a pure vision of some deities or someone who taught that to that Mahasiddha, and then it all came through him as a kind of a pure vision teachings. And that's completely possible and acceptable as a hagiographical source. But Buddhism is regarded to be very, very factual and logical. And so therefore, sutras are the very safe texts to study on. And I must say that in Tibetan Buddhism, the monastic curriculum, there's hardly any sutra. They never study any sutra, never read them. But they always use textbooks written by 3rd century AD onwards, say people like Nagarjuna and so on. All the Nalanda Panditas, their writings are incredibly rich and true to the teachings of the Buddha, but they are not original words of the Buddha. They were all individual writings of these very scholars based on Buddha's teaching, such as the sutras. They often quote sutras. And you can see they definitely came from the sutras. But the actual writings of Nagarjuna, of Shantideva, of Aryadeva, you name it, they are all metered writings. 7-syllable, 9-syllable, 11-syllable, or whatever. And then they have put them into chapters. So they become almost like original writings by the Indian Panditas. But they are not sutras. The subject might be sutric because whatever Buddha taught in the sutras are often found in those. So that's why it is good to go to the sutras. But in Tibetan Buddhism, what they do is when they read the sutras religiously. Like we have 108 volumes that are all consisting of many discourses of the Buddha, and Sutra is about at least 30 volumes. They're all read religiously as by the merit of reading it, then people think that. So they will invite monks and anyone who can read actually to the Tibetan lay people's homes, and they will have whole 108 volumes read over however long it takes, because depending to how many people come to read. But they all read formally, each of them maybe quietly, or maybe audibly, but there's nobody listening to the sutras. They read it for religious reasons, just because. And then the monks and people who are reading are given food and offerings and so on. The family almost does that ritual of having the sutras and tantras and commentaries read annually. So that's that kind of tradition of honoring the sutra reading is there, but reading the sutra for the sake of education seems to be somewhat marginalized because of the textbooks that are written by Indian. So now in this literary age, I would call 21st century, is we are so literary that even AI will read more than we can read. That almost everybody know how to read. And also you can read so fast if you know how to do speed reading. But I'm not doing speed reading here. But reading is one of the 10 recommended Dharma activities. Listening is the second. Writing is the third, Copying is the fourth, And so on. So reading the sutra and listening to that is even more meritorious. Therefore, this particular sutra is definitely a compilation because each of them are fairly independent stories. Usually when you have a sutra called Meeting Between Father and Son, for instance, when Shakyamuni Buddha returns to his hometown, Kapilavastu, at the repeated request of his father. And so there is one sutra named Meeting Between Father and Son. And that's actually a whole complete sutra. Complete sutra is all about what happened between him and his dad, what conversation took place, and what teaching came from that. But this sutra, wise and foolish, is not one such independent. This actually has as many as 52 stories. So the title, the wise and foolish, is a generic title given by the people who compiled it. We have no way of knowing it. The reason why they call wise and foolish is that when you read between the lines of the story, you can see, that was wise, or that was not. So you can tell, you can mostly, it is all about wise, and then we can see our foolish aspect of it. If you read between the lines of the story, you will see, I would have never done that. Why would people do that? Why would he feed his body to the hungry tigers? We wouldn't even give our lunch to hungry tigers. We would try to shoot the tiger away so that we can save our lunch. whereas the Mahasattva give his body to a hungry tigress instead of letting her die of hunger. So it's the wisdom or wiseness of one feeding one's own body to the hungry tigress is a wow, of almost like wow. It's the wise is probably understatement. It's almost, you have no word for it. Wow, who can do that? But yet he did that, So from that line we can say, wow, we as a person, foolishly would almost try to shoot the tiger instead of making ourselves to be fed to her. So this kind of reading interpretation you can do while you're listening to this story. So with this short introduction, now I'm going to start reading from the first story. These stories are quite in varying length. Some only on a page and a half. Some of them are maybe 10, 20 pages. So therefore, we might be able to cover quite a few stories each night. But what I ask you is that you try to remember, if it's possible, the names and the thing. What was the central teaching, or what was the moral of that story? Who was the principal role players? And then Buddha actually tells who was what in their past lives to do this and to experience this and so on. So therefore, it makes it a little even more interesting if you can relate that with you and you are someone in life, and then what must have he or you have been to each other in the past incarnation. Doesn't have to be past life. Could have been 20 years ago. And what were you like to each other then? What you are then to each other now? Some people disappear from your life, don't you? Even in 10 years after or 15 years after. But your karmic consequences of that interaction hasn't disappeared. That's the mark of that encounter with them and us is still there, and it has consequences to you if you think about it, or to reconcile it, or to build on it, or to most people tend to ignore and evade as if they don't care. But it will. The consequences will meet you at the other corner of your life if you don't do something about it. So these are the readings that will come from. Anyway, most of the stories will start with "Thus I have heard." So this you should, every Buddhist sutra, unless it's an extract from a longer sutra, always start with "Thus I have heard." Word "thus I have heard," Evamaya Sutra in Sanskrit, So this very much talks about that you actually heard it directly from the mouth of the Buddha as a first person. You are the actual person who heard this story. And the impact of that, what you heard, was so much so that it left ongoing kind of an impact on you, like a carving on the rock. Some people said something, you barely remember what they said at all, or who was that they said. But people who hear the Buddha say something, it has a profound effect on them and changed their life. And so, therefore, people like Ananda, who heard most of the discourses, "Thus I've heard," means what he heard has many reasons for him to retell the story. So reason why we are reading this story is so that it also becomes "Thus we have heard." And that we usually don't have a deep listening and deep understanding. We watch a movie or something just for the 1 hour's entertainment. We are only doing to please the eyes and ears, that's it. But when you read a sutra, when you listen to sutra, it isn't like that. It will have an incredible pointing that you thought was not relevant to you at the beginning. It was, you would think, oh, that was him and her and what happened to them. But is it that? No, you heard something. You heard something that is very poignant in your life. For instance, you and your dad, or you and your mom, or you and your sister, or whatever, that you previously never understood why it is the way it is. So this is what I wanted you to remember. "Thus I've heard" has incredible meaning to you. So it will reveal many of the things that you haven't understood, the dynamics of your life and your relationship, your ups and downs and success and failures, disappointment or amazing stories that you experience. They have many, many causes and conditions that was consummated in past incarnation. And so therefore, even those things you have tried so hard in this life, you haven't seen any reward or benefit now, it will never go astray, and you will find them somewhere at the least expected time and space as a result of that. So don't overlook the law of cause and effect. in fact, all your present life's experiences are causes you yourself have consciously or unconsciously created in the past to someone, and so therefore you must therefore acknowledge the good things you are going through in life as a result of such great good service that you have made to others. Even the setbacks and difficulties you're going through now that you couldn't quite accept them are things that you have irresponsibly ignored and run away and evaded, and that you can never run away from karma, law of cause and effect. So these are the sort of things, thus I've heard, had the meaning. So with that, now I would shut up, but I'll read. I'll read the sutra itself. Namo ayala gedan ludan nujenge chugon dada mege namda ro gunji dana jaza tamje gedo da gejo dendo. Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called Beginning of the Narratives because it is all about narrating something. Thus I've heard at one time, when the victorious, perfectly departed, enlightened one. So this is the translation of Samyak Sambuddha, Stanley Frye, who translated from Mongolian into English, has translated the victorious one, perfectly departed, enlightened one. That's his translation. I think perfectly enlightened one, that's fine. Samyak Sambuddha had entered the great realm of victory and had achieved supreme enlightenment. He dwelt in the land of Magadha. So this is Magadha. Magadha is the present Bihar, present called Bihar. Magadha actually means central land, central land. So this is all occurred near Bodh Gaya. And the thought came to him, this is Shakyamuni, historic Buddha, when he attained enlightenment, and the thought came to him, what benefit can I do to the beings of this world who have long been blinded by false views which are difficult to correct? So Buddha therefore pondered as to what can he do to all the beings who are so blinded by the false views, meaning thinking, I am my name, I am my gender, I am my ethnicity, and they are not, he's not. This kind of innate grasping, ignorantly grasping to form and color and the names as self. So this is the false views. Difficult to be correct. It would be better to attain final nirvana. So he says, maybe I should pass away here. After attaining enlightenment, he says, maybe I should pass away. Remember, Buddha spent 7 weeks after gaining enlightenment not teaching. He was pondering what could we do. He said, mostly he said, nobody will understand what I'm talking about. I should rather retire in the forest. And so among those, during those 7 weeks, this is what he was thinking. Then at the time, deities of the realm of Brahma, the Brahma is who is the king of the what we call desire realm, and they're perceiving the thought of the blessed one. So the Brahma and Indra are the god kings, and who could read the Buddha's mind, descended from their realm, prostrated themselves at his feet, folded their palms in devotion, and pleaded with him to turn the Wheel of Dharma. Now, this is very historically true story, that because Buddha did not want to teach anyone, because he knew that most people are not quite ready to understand his teachings, so he was reflecting on all his past lives, and which all came rushing into his memory like you just turn on this TV on, like that. He could just remember all these past lives. And at that time, then Brahma and Indra, Brahma offered the 1,000-spoke Wheel of Dharma, and Indra offered this conch shell as a token and requested the Buddha to teach the Dharma. So I pleaded with him to turn the Wheel of Dharma. So turn the Wheel of Dharma is a very Buddhist terminology. So when you learn anything, you have to learn the terminology. In Buddhism, we are turning the Wheel of Dharma. At the beginning, beginning of our teaching, we did the one verse, requesting to teach. So in Buddhism, we follow the tradition. The teachings should formally be requested to be given, and so Buddha himself even get enlightened. He couldn't find who he to teach to, and so then therefore it is out of modesty that he has to be requested to be taught. So that's one Buddhist culture is like that. That's why you don't see Buddhist people knocking people's doors saying, "I got good news to tell you." They never go to people's home and go and try to teach the people. Even people come to receive the teachings, we still give the benefit of doubt to them that they must themselves knowingly and consciously embrace it rather than following something blindly. So there is this Brahma who came to ask the Buddha to teach. This is a very good auspicious beginning, that all the thus I've heard only happened only after someone like Brahma requested the Buddha to teach. Then the Blessed One spoke to them, because them means these Brahman, Indra, all the entourage, all of them descended upon. Deities of the Brahma realm, these beings are obstructed by burrowing in the defilements. The Buddha spoke to them, they're all burrowing in the defilements. They are given to the pleasures of the world, as they have no perfect thought or wisdom. While they are in this world, there is no help for them. For this reason, I shall enter final nirvana. He said that even if I teach the Dharma, they are lost in pleasure. They are all lost in their sensory pleasure, and they have no idea of that their life is limited, as a lifespan is short, and once they die, they will all fall into Laura. They are not aware of that. So he says, I will not teach them because they will not really take this teaching seriously. Again, the deities of the Brahma realm pleaded, Lord, the ocean of the law has been filled. The banner of the law has been furled. The time has come to make known the law. Now that there are many beings to be saved, what is the reason that the Lord refused to do this and wishes to enter into final nirvana? So they are now asking, why is it that we are so lost in samsara? You're completely enlightened. Why you wanted to pass away into nirvana? Have compassion on those beings who are blinded by great ignorance and become a refuge to them. We beseech you. So now Brahma is actually becoming more repeated. This is why we always repeat requests few times, not just he's also repeating the request. Why you are not teaching us? We are blinded by ignorance as you see it. Countless eons ago, Lord, you were born on this earth as an emperor by the name of Akasapala. This emperor had subject to him many kings, wives, princes, 84,000 cities, 20,000 palaces. Because of his loving kindness, the emperor was revered as the father by all his subjects. One day the emperor thought, now this is Brahma telling the story to the Buddha, Quite an interesting turnaround. Because I'm the leader of all these people who love and trust me, I shall benefit them with the precious jewel of the divine law. The divine law here, Stanley is translating from the word Sadharma. Sadharma is Tibetan with Tampe Chö, means sacred Dharma, sublime, so divine law. So I think it's a lot of early translators have used quite a lot of Judeo-Christian terminology. Divine law. So divine law, they translate the holy Dharma as the divine law. They think that the law, Dharma is a divine. And Buddhism wouldn't quite agree with that. Divine law sounds like a law of the God realms, But Dharma surpasses that. Dharma does not really agree to the law of the Brahmas. So jewel of the divine law means gem of the sacred Dharma. Divine law is Saddharma. Saddharma means sacred Dharma. He then issued a proclamation saying, to whomever can instruct me the divine law, I shall give whatever he asks. So now here, Brahma is telling the Buddha how in past life of the king, how he sought so hard to find Dharma. At that time, Brahmin teacher by the name of Liu Chunze, so this obviously is a very corrupt, this doesn't sound like Sanskrit. So because it translated from 4 languages, they have definitely lost the actual name of the whatever, Liu Chunze. Liu Chunze came to, you can say Liu Chunze is a really corrupted form of sinicization of Khotanese word, and Khotanese would have also been Khotanization from the Sanskrit. so every time the word like the word Sanskrit word dhyana, when translated, Chinese call it Chan and Japanese call it Zen. so that's how the words get corrupted in terms of Chan is a palatal word. Dhyana is dhyana, start dental, palatal, and then post-nasalization, dhyana. But Chinese call it Chan. And then Japanese try to say Chan, it becomes Zen. So Liu Junje definitely is a corruption of how the original Sanskrit word would have been Khotanized and then sinicized, and then Tibetanized, and then to try to become Mongolian, and now in English you end up with Liu Junze. Because many languages don't have a strict transliteration system as modern linguists have. We have developed, modern linguists have a strict protocol of transliterating like Tibetan into Romanization. There are quite a few school of thought, but one that is mostly used is called Wiley transliteration. This is a Washington University in Seattle professor. He's mainly a Chinese specialist, but he was one of the pioneers to learn Tibetan, and he systematized the transliteration of Tibetan into Romanization. It's called Wiley transliteration. Then you don't lose any letter or spelling when you have correct transliteration. So this obviously shows it's suffered the loss of it, because Chinese language doesn't have transliteration system, because Chinese language is not alphabetical language. Hence, there's a danger of losing the spelling. If you lose the spelling, it's easy to lose the pronunciation and the meaning altogether. So that's how lost in translation. It's called lost in translation, they call it. So here we have lost the name because I can't tell what the Liu Junze is. Anyway, at that time, Brahmin teacher by the name of Liu Junze came to the palace gate and said, "If the divine law is required, I possess it." So the Brahmin actually says, "Look, I have the Dharma. If you want the Dharma, I have it." When the emperor heard this, he and his retinue went out to greet the Brahma, because Brahmin said, I know the Dharma. And the king and his subject minister were so happy. They placed him on a dais, probably means throne. So this is the translation here. Of course, the dais sounds like reasonable, maybe a slightly raised platform. But the throne seems to be much more ornate, isn't it? And they placed him on a dais, bowed, folded their palms in reverence, and said, "Great teacher, you have come to teach us, who are blinded by ignorance, the divine law." The Brahmin said, "Your Majesty, the law which I teach is not easy to learn, nor can it be cheaply obtained." The emperor replied, "Teacher, only speak, and whatever it is that you wish, I shall command to be given you." It means he will give you whatever. I'll give command to give whatever you want in exchange of your teaching. The Brahmin said, "Your Majesty, if you sufficiently desire the law to offer your own body as a sacrifice, to have it pierced with 1,000 shafts and burned with torches, I shall consent to teach the law." Yeah. Now he says you have to put 1,000 wicks on the body, and each of them burning, and then I will teach you the Dharma. The emperor accepted with joy and sent a courier with a mighty voice to all the lands of the continents of Jambudvipa. Jambudvipa is the kind of, they think is the Indian subcontinent, to proclaim to the princess and the people that within 7 days he would make a sacrifice of his body for the sake of divine law, that it would be pierced with 1,000 shafts and burned with torches. Hearing this proclamation, the princes and people were overcome with grief. Coming before the emperor, they knelt and pleaded. When they heard this, they couldn't believe what the king is going to do. They all begged him, "Your Majesty, just as the blind depend upon those who can see, as infants depend upon the mothers, so do we depend upon you. Your Majesty, if you die, we shall have no one on whom to depend. If your body is burned with 1,000 torches, you will certainly be separated from life. Will you abandon all these beings in the world for the sake of a single Brahmin?" And with folded palms, the emperor's wives, 500 children, and 1,000 of the nobles besought him to renounce the sacrifice. So they all tried to dissuade him. Why you would do this? Listen to this crazy Brahmin, crazy Brahmin. Then the emperor spoke with firm resolution. "People do not obstruct me. When perfect enlightenment has been obtained, I shall without fail deliver you." Hearing the emperor's resolve, people fell on the ground in grief, sobbing. So the emperor was so, so resolute that he's going to do the sacrifice for the sake of the Dharma. The emperor then said to the Brahmin, "I am ready to have my body pierced and burned with 1,000 torches." When he said, pierce my body," the Brahmin pierced the emperor's body and plunged the torches into the oil. When the people saw this, they fell on the ground like a great mountain when it collapses. So meaning everybody, fainted and lost consciousness. The emperor then spoke to the Brahmin, "Teacher, first teach me the law, then burn me with the torches." So he says, first at least teach me the damn thing before I die. Otherwise I shall be unable to hear the law. The Brahmin then spoke the following verse. So the Brahmin is now teaching the Dharma. All component things disintegrate. So this is the very fundamental Buddhist teaching, means everything that is conditioned, they are impermanent, they will disintegrate. So that means all buildings collapse, all relationship will break, all meetings part, all youth will become old, all friends will lose each other, and all health will deteriorate into sickness, all young will become old, and all memories will become forgotten, and so on. What rises must fall, all meetings end in separation, what is born must die. So this is a very, very famous Buddhist saying, yeah? The emperor rejoiced because what he heard, he's saying that he's going to die, so he's going to die anyway. So he says, what's the fuss? I'm going to die because I was born already, The emperor rejoiced and without a single thought of regret said, "This is the law which I have sought, the perfect enlightenment which I have made known. I vow that when I shall have attained perfect enlightenment, I will with the light of transcendental wisdom give light to all those who are blinded by ignorance." So there's lots of teaching in this paragraph, saying that we should now see what is the "thus I have heard." Because we have to learn to let go some things. Things are changing and you are resisting from accepting the changes. So you must let go. Then you have heard the Buddha. Then the Brahmin is teaching this, and this actually becomes a teaching. Because a lot of us are holding on to some feelings, some opinions, some views. We don't want to drop them as this should stay long and permanent. But that is the ignorance. Blinded by ignorance. When he had uttered these words, the heavens trembled and palaces of the divinities in the pure realms shook. The divinity descended and seeing the broken body of the Bodhisattva king, wept a rain of tears and made offerings of showers of flowers. So the king died. Yeah, king died, having heard the Dharma, but his body, of course, was to set alight with thousand torches. Then Indra, the ruler of gods, approached the emperor, lauded him many ways, and said, "Great emperor, this terrible suffering, do you have no thought of regret?" Now these devas are playing, one is instigating him to do, another is trying to dissuade, And the emperor said, "No, there's no regret," because Indra was trying to dissuade him from doing what he was doing. Again, Indra spoke, "Your Majesty, when one sees your body thus trembling in agony, it is difficult to believe that you have no thought of regret." The emperor said, "If there is not one single thought of regret within my entire body, may those wounds be healed." Yeah. So now this is called the utterance of the truth, swearing by the truth. The king knew very well that he had no regret. He says, if I have no regret at all, which I'm saying, then by the power of the truth, may all my body be recovered. And immediately emperor's body became whole. His body was completely healed, and there was not a sign of single injury. Lord, at that time, it was you who were the emperor. So in this case, this Brahmin is telling the Buddha, the Brahma is telling the Buddha what Buddha did in the past life. Long ago, Lord, you experienced limitless suffering in order to obtain divine law for all living beings. Why is it that you now abandon them to obtain final nirvana? This is last time you offer your body for the sake of one verse, put 1,000 butter lamps on your body, and now why you want not to teach? This seems like contradictory. So he's saying, of course, Buddha knew that, but for the sake of the story, someone needs to make the request. Again, Lord, long ago, you were born in this Jambudvipa. Now again, as the Buddha doesn't know, because the Brahma is telling the Buddha, Lord, long ago, you were born in the Jambudvipa as a great king called Jinlinkali. So this also is I can't make sense of this in Sanskrit, nor in Tibetan. I don't know the name is Jinlinkali. Anyway, that's the name of a king. This king and subject of him many princes, 84,000 cities, many wives, 20,000 palaces. He had 500 sons, and 10,000 ministers. In his great compassion, he looked upon of his subject as an only child. At one time, the great king, believing in and desiring the divine law, made the proclamation, "Whoever will deign to instruct me the divine law, to him I shall gladly grant whatsoever he desires." So this is talking about another life of the Buddha in past who was seeking Dharma and wanted to give everything for the sake of Dharma. One day a Brahmin named Liu Duji appeared at the palace gate and said, "If there is someone who wishes to hear the divine law, I'll teach it." When the king heard this, he went out to meet the Brahmin with great joy and devotion. He bowed at his feet, praised him with his kind words, invited him to his palace, prepared a dais to sit on, folded his palms in reverence, and said, "I beseech the great teacher to teach the divine law." The Brahmin said, "I have had to endure great suffering in order to learn the law. If you, your majesty, wish to learn it, the cost will be great." So one who has the Dharma wouldn't teach. You have to give so much up. Pressing his palms together in reverence, the king replied, "Teacher, whatever you command shall be done." Meaning, whatever you want, you'll get it. Please give me Dharma. The Brahmin said, "If this be so, your majesty, then only after 1,000 iron spikes have been driven into your body shall I teach the law." So it means, piercing 1,000 iron spikes on your body. If you do that, then I'll teach you. When the people heard this, then all came to the king and said, "O king, we who come from all directions have been greatly happy, each in our own land, because of your wisdom and kindness. We now beseech you to have pity on us and to renounce this evil deed of allowing your body to be pierced with 1,000 iron spikes." Then the queen and the princes and all the ministers said, "Your Majesty, what is the lack of compassion? What is this lack of compassion? Why, for the sake of one man, do you allow your body to be broken? Why do you abandon your people?" The king replied, "Through passion, anger, and ignorance in former cycles rebirth, I created sins without number with his body. My bones from former births are piled higher than the Mount Sumeru. I have shed more blood than 5 great rivers can hold by having man's head cut off. I have shed more tears than the 4 great oceans can contain. In various ways, I have created great demerit with this body. Now, by my body being pierced with spikes, may supreme enlightenment be realized. When I shall have attained the perfect supreme enlightenment, I shall cut away all the ills of my defilements and with the sword of wisdom. Then you will ask why you try to obstruct me." When all the people remained silent, the king said to the Brahmin, "Great teacher, first compassionately teach me the law, then pierce me with the spikes. If I do not hear the law, I shall die." So the king was really resolute. Again, similar story as before. Then the Brahmin who had the teaching said, Brahmin then recited the verse, "All compounded things are impermanent, all that is born is subject to suffering, all the elements of becoming are empty, and without self, what is called the self does not exist." So this very much captures the three seals of the Dharma. 3 seals of Dharma are 3 fundamental principles of Buddhism, that all things that are conditioned are impermanent. So that everything is impermanent. Second is all that is born is suffering. So meaning all those who are born with karma and affliction, so their life will be only suffering. So that's the suffering, prevalence of suffering. And then that all the elements of becoming are empty, without a self. There is no real self. The self does not exist. It's just merely labeled, merely imputed, but actual self does not exist. So there are impermanence, suffering, and emptiness of self. These are the three principles of Buddhism. Having said this, he drove 1,000 spikes into his body, into the body of the king. When the prince and nobles and all the people saw this, they fell on the earth, mourning like a great mountain when it collapses. At that moment, the heavens shook in 6 ways, and the divinities in the realm of desire, this is referred to Kamadatu, and those in the realm of form, that refers to Rupadatu, marveled greatly. They descended to the Bodhisattva king, and seeing his body, wept a rain of tears and great pity, and made offerings of flowers. Then again, Indra, the Lord of gods, approached the king and said, "O great king, in order to achieve what end are you undergoing this terrible suffering? Is this for the sake of law, or do you wish to become endowed with the might of an Indra, of a universal monarch, Mara king, Brahma king, or Maheshwara?" The king answered, "This deed of mine has not been done to obtain happiness in the 3 worlds. 3 worlds refer to the desire realm world, form realm world, and formless realm world. It has been done to attain supreme enlightenment." Indra asked, "Your Majesty, while your body is suffering thus, have you no feeling of regret?" He's doing the same thing. The king replied, "There is no thought of regret." Indra said, "Seeing your body trembling thus, who could believe that you have no regret?" The king replied, "If what I have just said is true, and if I truly have no thought of regret, may my body again become whole as it was before." See, that again, the swearing by the truth. And immediately the king's body became whole, and the divinities men believe and rejoice. And again they said to the Buddha, "Lord, you have fulfilled the ocean of law with countless virtues. Why do you now truly abandon all beings, enter into final nirvana without teaching the law?" Again, the Lord, inconceivable countless eons ago, this is again, Brahma telling, he's telling another story. Again, Lord, inconceivable countless eons ago, you were born in this Jambudvipa as a son of an emperor called Brahmadeva. See, they preserve the correct word, Brahmadeva. This prince, desiring the divine law, sought it in all directions, but being unable to obtain it, became depressed and despondent. The Lord of the gods, Indra, knowing the mind of the prince, transformed himself into Brahmin, and coming to the gates of the palace, spoke thus, I have the divine law. If it is required, I'll teach it. The prince, hearing these words, bowed to the Lord teacher's feet, invited him to the palace, placed him on a dais, folded his palms in reverence, and said, Great teacher, compassionately teach me the divine law, I beseech you. The Brahmin said, This teaching is exceedingly difficult to learn. Even though one strives, it is hard to find a teacher. You cannot learn it cheaply. If you truly wish to hear the law, you can know that it can be done with only with great difficulties. The prince replied, Great teacher, whatever you desire, I shall gladly give you. Even my own body, my wife, my sons, my daughters, only consent to teach the law. So he said, you teach, I'll give up everything. The Brahmin said, If you are able to prepare a pit of fire 10 cubits deep and burn yourself in it, I shall teach the law. So this first story is all about suffering for the sake of doing anything the body may go through if you can hear one teaching. In accordance with the Brahmin word, the prince had a fire pit prepared. Emperor, the empress, and all the nobles, realizing that what was going to take place, were grief-stricken. Going to the prince's palace, they circumambulated him and Brahmin and begged, O divine teacher, have compassion to us all. We beseech you not to burn our prince. In his place we offer you our lands, our wives, our children, even our bodies. Brahmin said, I have no need of such things. If the prince can do as I've said, I shall teach the law. If he cannot, then I'll not. Brahmin then remained silent, and all those who were gathered there knew he had sworn an irrevocable oath. Then the emperor sent out a mighty voice courier to all the continent of Jambudvipa, who announced that within several days the prince, desiring the law, would sacrifice his body in a pit of fire. All were present themselves immediately. Then all the princes and all the people, even the old and weak, sadly came one by one to the prince, kneeled, pressed their palms together, and in one voice pleaded, O prince, we all rely upon you. You are the father and the mother to us. If you are burnt in pit of fire, who will then be our protector and refuge? Why do you abandon your people for the sake of a single person? The prince answered, Listen to me. During countless former births, while circling in the round of birth and death, born as a human being, I did great evil by angrily participating in killing. When I obtained my birth among the gods, I experienced the suffering of death and was deprived of happiness. When born in the hells, I underwent suffering by being burned in fire, boiled in the cauldron, cut and chopped with swords and sabres. I was made to climb mountains of sharp knives, to swim in poisonous waters, and more too. I have undergone limitless suffering. I have experienced sickness, which reduces one to bones. Born as a starving ghost, I suffered beyond belief. Born as an animal, I was forced to carry burdens until I was exhausted. Nor could I find remedies to heal my wounds. Times without number have I suffered torture and death. Evil was done with this body. I have done nothing with the thoughts of virtue for the sake of divine law. Do not now obstruct me in establishing a thought of supreme enlightenment. In order to realize Buddhahood, I shall make a perfect offering of this body. When shall I have attained supreme enlightenment? I shall give you gifts with the Dharma body. So the king was very resolute. Again, this is the third story. People remained silent, and the prince approached the pit of fire and stood in its edge. He then said to the Brahmin, "Great teacher, first teach me the law, I beseech you. If I die in the fire, I shall be unable to hear it." So he says, I want to first hear the Dharma before I jump into the fire pit. The Brahmin spoke the following verse: "Meditate on the thoughts of love. Cut off thoughts of anger and hatred. In great compassion, aid beings. Mercifully forgive all." So that was the teaching about loving kindness, compassion, to overcome hatred, and give a hatred and forgive everyone. That was the teaching. Meditate on great joy. Be in harmony with others. When in the mind of enlightenment one teaches the Dharma, Bodhisattva course is realized. So basically, entire gist of the teaching was taught. When these words has been spoken, the prince was about to leap into the fiery pit. Brahmin, in the ashamed, held him back and said, "By your merit, all the beings in Jambudvipa have been made happy. If you are now burnt in the fire, all the common people will be deprived of their father and mother. Why do you enter the fire, bereave these beings?" Seeing the lords of the gods and all the people, Prince answered, "While I am bringing forth the thought of supreme enlightenment, do not obstruct me." When the prince entered the pit of fire, a firmament trembled greatly, and the gods in heaven wept and sent down showers of tears. The pit of fire was transformed into a palace of flowers, and prince was seen sitting in a lotus. The gods sent down a rain of flowers that reached the people's knees. At that time, so now the Brahmin is telling, at that time, King Shuddhodana was King Brahmadeva. So he's telling the Buddha that time the king is the present King Shuddhodana, who's your father, was the King Brahmadeva, and you, Lord, was the prince. You were his son. So father and son last time, father and son this lifetime. O enlightened one and teacher, at that time you out of compassion for beings sought the law. Now having attained supreme enlightenment, why do you say that it would be better if you enter final nirvana without enlightening all the beings who are blinded by ignorance? So he uses the story saying, look, you did this in the past lives, why you wouldn't teach Dharma now and enter into nirvana? Again, Lord, countless ago, now this is the fourth story. Again, Lord, countless eons ago, they lived in Benares. The Benares is a present-day Varanasi. 500 sages with the teacher Upala. Upala wandered here and there in search of divine law to learn, meditate, and at one time proclaim, "If anyone can teach me the divine law, I shall become his slave." Brahmin teacher, hearing these words, said, "I have the divine law. If you require it, I'll teach it to you." The sage bowed low before the Brahmin, pressed his palms together in reverence, and said, "Great teacher, have compassion on me, teach me the law." Brahmin answered, "It is exceedingly difficult to learn the divine law. I have learned it only by enduring great suffering. If you wish to learn the true law, will you do as I command?" When the sage answered, "The great teacher, command, and I shall obey." The Brahmin said, "Cut off your skin and make paper. Make ink of your blood and write the law. Then I shall teach it to you." So saying that your skin should be used as a paper and so on. With great joy and devotion, the sage, in reverence for the law of the enlightened one, flayed his skin, made a pen from his bones, and mixed with blood and ink. Then he said, "Time has come, teacher. Quickly teach me the law, and I shall write it." The Brahmin teacher then spoke the following two verses. "Control the acts of the body. Do not passionately desire thyself, who destroys the mind. So this is teaching to subdue one's desire and control one's body. Do not speak false, harsh, thoughtless words, and do not abandon yourself to desire. So this is talking about minding your speech. Cut off your thoughts, anger, when all wrong views are cut off. This is supreme. This is the course of the bodhisattvas. So this means the abstention from the desirous act from the body, and abstention of words of using bad mouthing, harsh, hurtful, divisive, untruthful, negative, and chatter and idle gossip, and then getting rid of the thought of covetousness and anger and the wrong view. If you did this, then you will gain enlightenment. So that was the really teaching. When the sage has written these verses, he wrote this in his blood, yeah? He was glorified throughout the whole world, and men endeavored with great zeal to learn what he had taught and to cut off evil deeds. It was you, Lord, who at that time, with no thoughts of regret, underwent great suffering to find the law for the sake of many beings. What now is the reason that, abandoning all beings, Lord refuses to teach the law and says that it would be better to enter final nirvana? So Brahma is basically using these stories to encourage the Buddha to give the teachings and not enter into nirvana. So these days we have in practice also, we always request the teachers to live long, live long, particularly if they look old or reaching some advanced ages. They usually asking them to live long. So this is not a new thing. This has been done because a collective merit has to be created for the teacher to live long and teach. Again, the Lord, countless numbers eons ago, this is the fifth story, you were born in Jambudvipa as a king called Sipsen. Sipsen, that doesn't sound right, that one. This king had a palace named Pardi and countless possessions. He was the master of all Jambudvipa, had subject to him 84,000 princes, 60,000 nobles, 80,000 cities and towns, and 20,000 palaces. He had 500 sons and 1,000 great ministers. Now, while this king was reigning with great compassion and benevolence, Indra and Lord of God was losing the 5 virtues of his body, was drawing nigh to death, and suffered greatly. They are signs of death, signs of death. And Vishwakarma, the craftsman god, seeing his great suffering, asked him the cause. Indra asked, I am approaching death. The sign of the death have become manifest. The law of the enlightened one has disappeared. The bodhisattvas do not reside in the world because there is no one in whom to seek refuge. I suffer and am tormented. Vishwakarma is the divine craftsman, Vishwakarma means he's so talented in many types of activities. So he's a multi-talented artist. Said, O Indra, at present there dwells in the world a man who follows the bodhisattva path, whose name is King Shipsen. This king is unshakable and through great endeavor is indeed realizing supreme enlightenment. Should you seek refuge in him, he will certainly save you from death and you will attain peace. Indra said, this may be true, but first we must ascertain whether or not king is really a bodhisattva. In order to do this, you, Vishwakarma, transform yourself into a dove. I shall change myself into a falcon and to pursue you. And when we enter the king's palace, we will know the true nature of the king. So he says, let us all both those days they can transform themselves into a bird, a falcon, and a dove, Vishwakarma said, Indra, even the cleverest of rasas, it will be impossible to deceive the bodhisattva king. Thereupon he changed himself into a dove, and the Indra, transforming himself a falcon, pursued him. So who will know falcon is Indra? Who will know the prince is a dove? In great terror, the dove flew into the king's palace and hid himself under the king's arm, crying, "O king, save my life." Falcon flew into the palace and addressed the king, "Your Majesty, this dove is mine. It is my food. I request you to return it to me immediately, for I am perishing with hunger." The king said, "I pledge to save the life of all who take refuge with me. I cannot give you the dove." The falcon said, "Your Majesty, if you save every living thing from death, you will take all my food from me. I shall become helpless and die." He says, how can you save all sentient beings when I'm dying of starvation? You're taking my food away." The king said, "If I give you other to eat, will you eat it?" The falcon answered, "I require freshly killed meat." The king thought to himself, "If I were to give the falcon freshly killed meat, I should have to take life, and this would create sin. How many living beings would have to sacrifice their lives? I can only give him the flesh from my own body." So the king said, "I will not give you the dove. I will rather give you my body." Then with a sharp knife he cut flesh from his own thigh and gave it to the falcon. When he had thus saved the life of the dove, the falcon said, "O king, you are indeed the master of charity, but the flesh you have given me is not equal to the dove. Weigh and dove and more of your flesh are a pair of scales, and give me the flesh, I beg you." So he's thinking, these are not equal. You have to, weigh and so on. The king commanded the scales and be brought, and on one pan he placed the dove, and on the other he put more flesh with which he cut from his thigh. As these did not balance the dove, he cut the flesh from his shoulders, from his ribs, finally from his entire body, but even this did not balance the dove. Must be a very huge dove. Can you believe it? Now, stories are stories. King must be so small, doesn't he? King must be so small. As he was preparing to put his entire body in the scale, he began to faint and lose consciousness. Then suddenly, taking thought, his mind reproached himself. "O mind, since beginningless time, while wandering in the three worlds, I have undergone every kind of suffering, and no merit has been achieved. Now, mind, your hour has come. This is not the time for shirking." Saying this, he reproached his mind in many ways, and with great effort arose and placed his body onto the scales. Then in great joy he realized his mind was at peace. The heavens trembled and shook in 6 different ways. The palace of the gods trembled and shook. The gods in the realm of form and all the divinity went to the highest heaven and watched. Seeing the Bodhisattva king give his body to the law, they wept and sent down showers of tears and flowers as offering. Then Indra, the lord of gods, assumed his own form and said to the king, "Your Majesty, what birth is it you wish to obtain by undergoing this agony? Do you wish to become a universal monarch, an Indra or Mara king? Do you desire the powers of the three worlds? What is your wish?" The king answered, "My desire has nothing to do with the pleasures of the three worlds. I seek supreme enlightenment." Indra said, "With your own body and bones, thus trembling in agony, certainly you must have some thought of regret." King replied, "There are no thoughts of regret." Indra said, "Seeing your body trembling and unable to return to life, who could believe what you say?" King said, "Within my entire body, from my head to foot, there is not a single thought of regret so large as a hair. My desire certainly will be fulfilled, and if my words are true, may these wounds on my body be healed." And immediately the king's wounds were healed, and his body became more lovely than before, and all the beings in the realm of gods were astonished and rejoiced and worshipped. You, Lord, were the king by the name of Sibsen. It was you, Lord, who in eons long past offer your body for the sake of all sentient beings. Now, Lord, you have filled the ocean of law. You have furled the banner of law, have beaten the drum of law, have lighted the lamp of the law. Now that time to help living beings has come. Why does the Lord refuse to teach the Dharma, abandoning all creatures, saying that it would be better if he entered final nirvana? Then Brahma, coming from the enlightened one, and folded his palms in reverence, lauded and praised, saying, Lord, as in times long past, you gave your head 1,000 times for the sake of beings and sought the law. I implore you to turn the wheel of Dharma for the sake of all living beings. Then the victorious Buddha, proceeded to Benares, and at a place called Deer Park, he turned the wheel of Dharma. So this is very elaborated, I would say, a request by Brahman Indra to teach the Dharma. Usually we say, they gave a 1,000-spoke wheel and a conch and asked the Buddha to teach, and then he taught, you see. So this is incredible. So all this, Buddha was persuaded to give the teaching, telling how all these past 5 lives, they only recall 5 different lives, in which each time did the Buddha or the king then gave his body with 1,000 lamps and 1,000 iron spikes and so on, how much they did for the Dharma, and so therefore. Then Buddha went to Deer Park. That's why the Varanasi we go these days. And only 2 days ago, 3 days ago, we celebrated the Chonkor Tuchen, the anniversary of Buddha turning the wheel of Dharma. So sometimes you can say, but before going to the Deer Park, Buddha gave all these teachings. This whole thing was a teaching. So why have to we call the teaching was only happened in Deer Park when he gave all the teachings of the 4 noble truths, 3 seals of Dharma, loving kindness, compassion, self-sacrifice. All of those was done already to maybe Brahma and Indra. Maybe the 5 mendicants didn't hear this, but Brahma and Indra definitely heard this teaching before. So what justifies the story that the first disciples that heard the teaching were the 5 mendicants, not Brahma and Indra? Of course. And thus the turning of the wheel of Dharma, 3 precious treasures became manifest in the world. And when the law was taught, gods, men, nagas, yakshas, asuras, all 8 classes of living beings rejoiced, believed, applauded, and approved. So that usually is how a sutra ends, as a result of that everybody heard, wow, how much are we willing to sacrifice for the Dharma? Usually we think it's a bit too much for us to go out in the cold to the center. Of course, we are not listening directly to the Buddha in person, but nevertheless, so now that here the crux of the matter is, what is the wise and foolish in these stories, Of course, the wiseness is how much the Bodhisattva in his former lives did sacrifice for the sake of a single verse. How much he was willing to, and even though he was completely tortured, his body has been burned like thousands tortures on his body, is almost like nothing is left. But by swearing of the truth, he healed himself. So likewise, there are a lot of stories like that, like the Buddha's wife, Yashodhara. I want to tell you this. Yashodhara was pregnant, According to Mahayana Buddhist teachings, Yashodhara was pregnant and haven't given birth to the son Rahula yet when Buddha Prince have left, And so one of the reasons that Prince Siddhartha was able to escape and not having too much a problem with Yashodhara was she at least, she may have lost her husband, but she still was expecting her son, her child. And so the story goes that, and also the father-in-law, King Shuddhodana, believed, oh, that was good. At least my son lived, but at least his wife is pregnant, so at least we will have his son. But the son, Yashodhara was meant to be expecting a son, but she was never giving birth, And then the father-in-law and everybody ridiculed her, Yashodhara, saying, oh, this can't be Prince Siddhartha's son. If he was, then he should be born. But you must be, if you are still expecting, must be son of somebody else. And they were really giving her a hard time, So, just imagine if you are in that position. But then Yashodhara did the same. She went in front of a pond in Kapilavastu and sweared. She said, if you guys don't believe me, and if I'm carrying the son of my husband, the Prince Siddhartha, then may my son come back to my lap. If this is not my legitimate son, and it is a son of someone else, as you people are accusing me, then let this boy drown. So saying, then she actually picked her boy and threw into the pond. And you know what happened? And miraculously, when she threw the boy in the pond, a big lotus flower received him onto the lake, and it made a couple of sort of round into the lake, and then the boy came back without drowning. And then everybody delighted and believed that this is a holy son of the Buddha. And therefore they were consoled a little bit, even though they have lost the Buddha. But at least his holy son is there, and he didn't drown. And there must be a sort of unexplained reason why Yashodhara have to carry the baby in her womb for so many years, at least 6 years or something. Anyway, so there are stories like this, people often use that. So, and we also, because we believe in the truth, even if people accuse you, have you been accused by people and something, and you almost were reduced to dust, and they want to destroy you totally? You shouldn't give up. This is the whole story. This is the wise. You shouldn't be the foolish to retaliate. Try to retaliate to prove them wrong. You should control your ego and pride, and swear the truth in your mind that, do you know exactly the truth? And so, because of that, nobody can harm you except anything you do wrong by yourself. So do not think that whatever people are doing or have done, do not harbor ill will towards them. Do not try to clear your name, so to speak, as the foolish people do. They say, clear my name, clean my name. Is the foolish people try to think their name got dirty, Name can only get dirty by your own misdeeds, not by misdeeds performed by others to you. So no matter how much wrong they did, it can never dirty your name. Swear by the truth, and you just do not get shocked or disturbed and agitated by this, and you should practice patience. This is really good, If you have if in your life sometimes you may have felt, I've got to stand up for myself. People call in the West, you should be brave or something. I will call it stupid, really. It's foolish. You're good, foolish. Trying to be the whistleblower or something, And they become whistleblower, and as they blew the whistle, they blew their life with it. Then they regret years after that, they get depressed. They didn't realize the consequences have consequences. They thought they are trying to punish somebody, but they don't think that they are trying to punish somebody have no consequences. That's the foolish. The wise know that if they are doing this to me, there's some great learning for me to do. Instead of playing foolish, I should be as wise as possible and tolerate with this, be patient. Everything is impermanent, Buddha said. It will change me. if I accept this. If I accept this blame, accusation, it'll change me so that all the similar karma we have consummated in the past, if there are any, there obviously must be, may this experience purify all of those accusations that I have falsely blamed some people, and may the negative karma and suffering that they are going to the extent of coming all this way to blame me, may that also be exhausted. So that's the Sutra of the wise. Sutra of foolish, this is how people go, you be brave, you be the whistleblower, you should be courageous. All people say, good on you, you're so brave, as if they're going to stand up for the rest of the world. No, they're all about themselves, It's all about their jealousy, all about their desire, all about their preoccupation not being fulfilled. But they don't know that. So we have to have pity to them. You must have some kind of unfinished karma with them, to the reason that they are going that far. And therefore, instead of trying to defend, instead of trying to try to prove them wrong, you as pray the wise. If you have thus heard this story, then play the wise and be tolerant. Don't harbor ill will. The teaching was said, don't harbor ill will. Don't harbor ill will when people mistreat you. And even if they mistreat you, think this will change you. These are impermanent. They will not keep doing this to you, because if you do not do tit for tat, it will not repeat itself. You will be able to come out victorious. You will become, even enlightenment is like that. Just being able to swallow the tear of other people's stupidity and aggression and accusation. That you see that as maybe this is my past life's mother or brother, or to whom I didn't treat very well, and accuse them and blame them and treated them with contempt. This is the kind of karma ripening now. If you think like that, then we have heard this story. We have heard this story. We just didn't listen to a story for the entertainment. We didn't listen to a story to put the baby to sleep, We have listened to a story to make this baby to wake up. Wake up. Wake up. So therefore, the Buddhist parables or stories, Buddha was always skillful to make these stories that he and Ananda in a place called Magadha, and key player here is Brahma and Indra. So next time you go to Buddhist temple, life of Buddha, you will see the Brahma, four-faced Brahma is offering 1,000-spoke wheel of Dharma to the Buddha, and Indra on the side is offering a conch, big conch. This actually is the historical event. Now, these 5 stories we read tonight is all elaborate that encounter between the Buddha in Magadha, because remember he got enlightenment in Magadha, which is called Bodh Gaya, which is the capital of Magadha is right now Gaya. Gaya is only 20 minutes down the road, and then from there. This conversation happened. Then only did Buddha go to Kapilavastu, to Saranath, Varanasi. And then he went wanting to see who he should teach. He first wanted to go and teach his 2 teachers, Alara and somebody, both teachers who taught him meditation. But he could see through his clairvoyance they both had passed away, so they could not teach. Then he thought he should teach. And then he remembered, my old 5 friends who abandoned him, Buddha had these 5 friends who are all from Kapilavastu. His father, his uncle, his 4 uncles, and his father, all 5 of them sent 500 people. And Buddha kept 5 representatives, sent 495, all of them back. He said, I don't need any of you. But he has to compromise by keeping 5 of them, because they will be punished by the parents if nobody stayed looked after. So this is the 5 friend of his who actually followed him and meditated. But when the Buddha started eating, they lost faith in him. They say he's a gluttonous, he's greedy, he's no longer keeping his vows. We will give up. Then they abandoned him. Buddha was so kind to him. Those who abandoned him, he wanted to go and teach them first. This is what the enlightened one is. This is the wise. The foolish wouldn't go and teach them. Foolish wouldn't go and teach them. He will try to go somewhere else and teach somebody else, Isn't it? Why? I don't want to share with you guys. You abandoned me. No, Buddha deliberately went to Sarnath. He knew they are there. And then the story about the Sarnath is then, because they have recently abandoned him, so they just said enough. They said, look, we can't be bothered following him. He doesn't keep up his vows. He thought he will never eat, but he started eating. He got very chubby, and they were really complaining him. And then of course, Buddha, when he arrived in Sarnath, which is the deer park, he knew they were there. And they saw him. The 5 mendicants saw Buddha. He said, oh, he's here. And they all feel very uneasy about it. They said, okay. Usually if they saw Buddha, they would get up and maybe offer a seat or offer him water or carry his bag. I don't think Buddha had 2 bags or 3 suitcases. He hasn't got it. Anyway, they said, don't show him any courtesy and just ignore him. If he want to sit next to us, so be it. Otherwise, don't get up, don't do anything. They made us some kind of inner rules. As the Buddha came closer and closer, his radiance, his presence was so unusual, unlike before. His appearance was so overwhelmingly powerful and inspiring. They could not sit still. They all got up and some offered him seat, others went got some water and whatever, they showed courtesy. And that's how the teaching started. So tonight's this first reading that we have done is very auspicious beginning, because it very much elaborates the Brahman Indra instigating the Buddha to give the teachings, reminding him in his past 5 lives, in each of them, how much he sacrificed for the sake of hearing one verse Dharma. He let his body to be pierced with 1,000 spikes and burnt with 1,000 kind of torches and so on and so forth, and put himself in the fire pit and cut his body. All of that story very much is here to instill faith and devotion that we too must cherish and value Dharma, and then try to have the wisdom to be tolerant with anyone in your life. Anything that's happening to you is not something they're doing this to you, but this is something what you did to others in the past lives that you may not recall, but nevertheless these very people in your lives were such and such to whom we have a huge karmic debt we owe them. So we must be patient. And we must not retaliate. We must practice compassion. We must, even if they are cruel, we should be patient. This is all impermanent. All sufferings will be exacerbated if I'm going to perpetuate and retaliate. And so you deliberately make yourself hear the teaching. Thus I have heard. You should have heard this sutra. You should read this sutra. Have the patience to read this sutra. Like this one is only page 12. 12 pages we read tonight. But it's not the length of the pages we read. Sometimes we read so many pages, but we don't remember much. But sometimes we can just read. So just like this first narrative, consisting of 5 stories. But we can see, okay, how much are we willing to sacrifice for learning Dharma? How much have we given time and energy, effort And how much more should we endeavor? How much we are willing to do things so the future generation and can hear the Dharma and hear these teachings. Because they are so more likely to be shortness of time. They don't have time to listen to 1 hour, half an hour teachings. They're so restless. All after 10 minutes, they're bored. They want to go and eat something. They want to touch something. They want to look at the phone. All these modern people are so poor with the time. Very few have the dedication to sit at the feet and company of fellow Dharma brothers and sisters, do the practice together, study together. Your life is wasting away. Can you afford to waste and procrastinate and delay attaining enlightenment for the benefit of others? Of course we cannot. If you want to play foolish, you will. If you want to be wise, then we should endeavor and whip the diligence, whip the renunciation, and get out of your comfort of beds and sit up, study, pick up your practices, and try to understand, reconcile with some of the problems in life. Who must have been he or she to me that I have to go through this and that? What are the sum of the karma that I haven't owned and purified is now ripening on me? So, and then try to learn to play the wise approach, and don't don't fall into the foolish way of looking for me and now and short-term gains and benefit and idleness and indulgence. So that is what is really meant by listening to the sutra, that we actually have heard what we have played blind ear to the teachings. Don't let the practice manuals and sadhanas collect dust. At least pick them up. Don't just sit yourself in a corner and being lonely and lost. Get up and come out and do practice with fellow practitioners and help someone else to meet the Dharma. That is thus I've heard. Thus we should hear from the reading of the Sutra of Wise and Foolish. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm sure we will meet again and to read for further chapters in this book. Thank you very much. Lots of past stories that we will reconnect. So let's do the dedication, Mary. This mere me hoga the depa menzage omnes me ale berado bebrande oceana vada desene herenda mayana jije Vadeva Meredaya Meove Vegas Delavas Tuhoda Mahayana Jiji Kareja Manjujinode Azama Dabadra Delava Following de zamba aja de gao de mer de zalam body jeda teba veda na yaranza where has been me freely with the generation. Thank you, everyone.